And I feel like a lot of people sort of underestimate the power of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool, especially when you are trying to build professional relationships. So we I'm sure we are all aware of okay this LinkedIn trend of I am pleased to share that and someone says they have announced a new position, there's maybe they've got a new job or stuff like that. So you could also leverage on that to promote your book. So you can just go on your LinkedIn and create a post and say I'm pleased to share that I just published my book. It was like you just sort of share a journey of how long the book took you to write, maybe the editing process was difficult. Just tell a story, a compelling story that you feel like even if a person is not interested in maybe the book, the story the book tells, but if you are able to have this sort of connection with your struggle publishing the book, I think that will go a long way in also getting their attention and generating interest such that you're now able to convert them eventually. And then finally, you can use book promotion sites to promote your book. Tellbooks is one of them. We provide book promotion services. We have an email list of about 20,000 users that we can always send out emails to promote your book for you. So when that happens, when you publish your book or when you're about to publish it, you can just reach out to us. And actually, that's one of the benefits that you'll be getting since you're a part of the author program, right? So first, so if you note, this is about the awareness stage. So now we're going to the interest. So second, interest, and interest is all about providing more information to leads about your book. So once you've been able to create that awareness from this first step, right? So you've created a countdown, you are doing a countdown, you are sharing blogs up from your book, you've written guest posts and articles, you've published a post on LinkedIn and you're using book promotion sites. What interest is all about is you want to provide more information about that book to people who have shown interest in it so that they are more compelled to pay for the book. And this usually involves newsletters to email lists. So one thing I would suggest in when you're creating this awareness thing. So for instance, for your LinkedIn, when you share that, okay, I'm pleased to inform you that I just published my book, you can add a link to the book for them to get the book there, and then you can also add a link to sort of maybe like a newsletter that you have, so that people can also just subscribe and get more information or tips and articles from you. So once you are able to do that, you can now consistently start sending emails to them, sort of reminding them that, hey guys, okay, my book, I wrote this book. You don't even necessarily need to say, okay, wrote it, but you could just tell like a story and then link it back to your book. So there's this particular author that does this very well, and I really admire him for it. His name is Mark Manson. He's the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Okay. So that was a curse word, but the title of the book isn't like I was intentionally cursing. So um he has a newsletter called the I can't remember the name, but something Monday newsletter. So basically, what he does with that newsletter is he still does the same thing that his books do, right? Which is to share life and motivational information to people. So what he does is he just writes very interesting articles in his email. But while he's doing that, he now sort of makes reference to his book. So he says, in my book, the subtle art of not giving a fuck, I said this and that, this and that, this and that. And then the way he says it is in such a way that whoever reads the article is more compelled to even go and get the book, right? So those are just some of the ways you could generate interest and convert leads that have shown interest in buying your book to actually pay for it. And the second is article and podcast features, and then interviews. I was supposed to include interviews here. So the interviews could pretty much be, so say for instance, you have a friend or you have someone in the podcast space who sort of is spotlighting literary arts, artists, authors, and things like that. You could just request for like being featured on their podcast. So you could just talk about your book, and that would go a long way in helping you generate more interest in your book, trying to get more people to know about it and things like that. You can also, you know, continue to write articles about your book, publish them online, and share them as much as possible. So that would also go a long way in also helping you generate interest. Then another one that is very powerful is testimonial from beta readers. So now a beta reader is someone who um, you give your book to during the stage, like when it is still in development phase, not when it is published already. So when it's in development phase, so they can read it and then give you feedback. Now, these people are very important because they help you to give more life to your book. So, if, for instance, you are writing a book that is not so, maybe the storyline is not so great, your beta readers can give you feedback and tell you, "Oh, maybe you could do this and do that, and do this and that," right? So, once you make those changes, you can send it back to them, and then they can help you with it. And basically, that is what we are trying to achieve with the body system of the Tell Book Sorter program. So each fellow of the double programs can serve as beta readers for each other, right? So you can send samples of your work to your body, and then your body can also send samples of their work to you, and then you read and then you give them feedback. Then, aside from your body in the body system, you also have myself, Sophia, and Teniola from Dell to um, provide you with that support, right? So you could just send your works to us. We can help you read it and then give you feedback on that. So because we've been given that special access to your book, one thing you can do now is you can now request for testimonials from us because we're able to read your book from the stage of it not being so great to the stage of it being, the masterpiece that it is now. So the type of testimonial we would give would be an indication of how much your story has evolved, how exciting it is, and things like that. So that goes a long way when you share that thing. When it goes a long way in helping you generate interest in your book and trying to get as much as possible to know and then pay for your book, right? So those are just some interesting tips to consider under the interest part of the sales funnel. Then finally, the decision part of the sales funnel. This involves getting prospects to decide on whether they would like to buy your book or not. So this part is really tricky because you might have gotten a lot. Let's say, just to give you a typical case study. So for every product, right, when awareness during the awareness stage, you can have like 1,000 leads, right? So that 1,000 leads pretty much is 1,000 people that are aware of your book, right? That have been informed of your book. So from that 1,000 leads, from converting those leads to prospects, that's the interest stage. The 1,000 can be reduced from like to 600, right? So 600 people that are still interested in your book, even though they've gained um, awareness about it. Then from that um, interest to decision, which is even the that's the closing part. The interest to decision can reduce from 600 to like 200, right? And then even from that decision to action of actually making the sale, which is closing, you can just have like say 50, right? So the goal is to see how you can optimize the number of people between decision and action, right? So there are so many ways you can do this. One is giving a discounted price to specific prospects, right? So you could just say something like early bird, right? Early bird pricing for your book. So you could just give like a time interval that anyone who buys your book between this time and this time will get a discounted price. That goes a long way in ensuring that when people want to make a decision about buying your book, they do so very quickly, right? And then the second is building a relationship with your prospects, right? So this is a very long term method, and it sort of involves you constantly reminding them, sending out emails, sending out um, WhatsApp messages in the case if they subscribe to your WhatsApp broadcast list, right? So rather than spamming people. So sending out those constant reminders to them that, hey, you showed interest in buying my book, or you haven't paid yet. What's up? Is there anything I can do to help? Another way you could do it is you could also, okay, I think that's in the next page, but you could also share free samples of your book, right? Just like is a brief, short version of your book that sort of captures the most interesting part. So you share that with them, and then they read through. And of course, that would even increase their interest more and convince them to decide on buying your book eventually, right? So that that goes a long way in converting decision into action, right? And then the final one is increase touch channels, and this one involves you ensuring that you are able to reach your prospects from various channels, so not just only one single place. So it means that you're not just using only emails or WhatsApp, but you're also using like your Instagram, your Facebook, like you are all over their faces, right? So they are like they cannot even avoid you actually. So they are constantly seeing you, you're constantly visible to them. So that constantly gives them a reminder at the back of their mind that hey, I need to buy this person's book. Then the final part is action, right? That is people actually taking the action to pay for your book. And this part is less of marketing and more of the platform, that's the place that you're selling your book. And some tips for that is okay if you have multi-payment options, because we usually notice for most of our authors specifically was that when someone wanted to buy their book, they usually complain that okay they don't have their credit card with them or things like that. So what we did was we had to develop a multi-payment option, right? So if you don't have your credit card, you can use bank transfer. If you don't have bank transfer, you can use your bank account to actually pay directly, and then you can even pay with cryptocurrency too if you have cryptocurrency. So that multi-payment option just sort of makes everything very like they don't have a choice, they don't have an excuse, right? Because and every customer, every prospect wants to make an excuse for not paying or buying your book. They'll be like, oh, network is bad, or there was no card option, or things like that. So you could always leverage on. You need to ensure that the platform that you're using has a multi-payment option, such that those excuses are not even an option, right? And then another thing is very optimized platform. So the platform that you want to sell your book on has to be very fast, like just lightning fast, right? So it doesn't take too long to load. It is web optimized and SEO optimized and things like that, so that people don't, excuses, right? They were like, oh, it was loading too long, took too long to load and stuff like that. So that's why I couldn't pay. Another thing is plagiarism protection, right? That pretty much involves ensuring that your book is not um, open to duplication or replication without your consent, right? So because that can reduce people's interest in taking action to buy your book, because at the end of the day they'll be like, oh, if I don't even download or buy this book from this platform, I can always get somebody to send this to me via WhatsApp, and that can lead to you not getting as much revenue as you should from the sale of your book, right? So it's always good to use a platform that will ensure that your book is protected from plagiarism, and Dell Books provides that um, with our in-app reading option as well, and then ease of use. So another thing about ease of use is um, the most common format for books is actually PDF, right? However, for certain book publishing platforms, they usually emphasize on EPUBs. So the goal of ease of use is to ensure that whether it is EPUB or PDF that your book eventually is, your readers are able to access it in any format. And we also provide support for that at Telbook. So you can either publish in EPUB, PDF, and even audio, right? So the goal of action really is to, like I said earlier, remove any form of excuse that your prospects might have to not buy your book, right? And that is where all these other tips come from. And we'll be moving on to how to develop a pricing model for your book. And under this part, we'll be talking about three major tips. Um, the first tip is understand the purchasing power of your readers. So I think I mentioned this during our fourth class on pre-publishing. You need to understand um, how much do your readers make on a monthly basis, and how much would they be willing to part away with to get your book, right? So a typical example that I usually give for this is trying to understand. So, say for instance, you're a author of children books, right? You write books for children. You need to understand that in that situation, your users and your customers are two entirely different people. The users in this case are children, so maybe a person from the age of 4 to 14 years old, and then the customer is the parent. So in that case, you in understanding purchasing power of your readers, you don't necessarily need to understand that of the user, but the customer, right? Because children don't make a lot of money to even actually pay for books, but you need to understand how much the average parent makes on a monthly basis, and how much you'll be willing to pay to get your book for their child, right? And then say for instance, if your book is not maybe a children's book, but maybe it's a book that will be appealing to university students, or people in tertiary institutions that are currently studying, that like teenagers or Gen Zs between the age of 15 to say 22 years old. You need to understand, okay, how much is this person's pocket money on a monthly basis? How much does this person make, and how much will they be willing to part with? So because those are just some really important factors you need to consider. Because there was a time when we had an author published on Tel Books, and even though she was this very popular um, top spoken word artist, she decided to price her book at 5,000 naira. A book of just, I think, how many, 40, like 40 pages, and she priced at 5,000 naira, thinking that, oh, because she was a popular author, a popular spoken word artist, I mean, that her popularity and her fans would be willing to pay. But we saw a lot of interest. So the awareness part, the interest part, she was able to check all of that. But when it came to the action of people actually paying, they couldn't pay because the price was too much for them. But eventually, we were able to convince her to reduce the price of the book from 5,000 to 500 naira. And almost instantly, she started seeing people paying, like, she was able to make a lot of money from sales of the book. So you really need to understand how much really the people that would be using this book have, like, how much they have, how much are they willing to pay for this book, because that would go a long way in ensuring that you're able to sell as many copies of the book as possible. Second is creating a pricing plan with discounts for early birds. This is sort of a way to give loyal create generate loyalty with your readers, so that they feel like, oh wow, I'm getting something special for being an early bird, for being one of the very first people to buy this book. So, like I mentioned in the previous part of this class, you could have a sort of timeline interval that, okay, between the first 10 days of this book launch, the book will be priced at 500 naira, then afterwards it is going to increase to 1,000 naira. And then one thing we've been able to do at Dell Books is we've added there's a countdown feature. So if your book is sort of using that this early bird discount thing, people will be able to see the countdown and say, okay, after this 4 days, the book price will change. Another idea under this discount for early birds is using pre-orders, right? So before your book is even available, even though you finish writing it and it is ready, you can set up a pre-order such that people are able to pay for your book before it is available on the platform. And you cannot be like, we provide pre-order publishing support on Tel Books, right? So you can you can create a pre-order, set a price for it. Of course, the price should be a discounted price of the actual book price, just part of the early bird discounts idea, right? And then people can buy the book. So once you eventually now launch the book on your launch date, people can start reading the book on the platform. So pre-orders go a long way in helping you to, one, generate that loyalty, to also generate awareness and interest, all those things we mentioned earlier. Because one of the things you need to be doing on your pre-order is you need to be like a countdown, okay, 10 days to the end of pre-ordering my book and stuff like that. So though pre-order is actually a very interesting idea you should consider when you're trying to publish your book. And then finally, give readers samples of your book through free reads. So this also goes a long way in building that loyalty, right? So you could sort of create a smaller pack of. So, say for instance, your book is like 100 pages, right? You could just give your the first two chapters of your book for free, maybe like 5 to 6 pages of that, give it out for free, get people to read it, especially if those first two chapters are the hook, right? So they are the things that will get people stuck on your book and as interested as possible in reading it to the end. So you can share that, you can publish it, and then now create awareness around it, get as much as possible to read, because people like free stuff. You'll even notice that a lot of people just go for the free stuff, read it, and say for instance, similar to the number explanation I was giving earlier. Say for instance, 100 people read the free sample of your book. According to the sales funnel thing, at the end of the day, you should be able to have about uh 10 to 15 of those 100 people eventually paying for your book, and that's a decent number, right? Considering the fact that all you just did was just created a smaller free sample version of your book. So with these three tips, I think those are just some of the things that we've been able to suggest to you on how you can um, create a pricing model for your book. And of course, at Tel, we can help you with each and every of those things. So one of the things I mentioned in the first part, which is creating awareness, is organizing your book events, and can of course help you with that. Then we also provide email support. Then regards to removing the friction or giving people excuses of not wanting to buy your book. Say for instance, somebody is not in the country and they want to buy your book. Tel Books has international payment support, such that people can actually pay for your book with any currency across the world, right? So that removes that excuse of, oh, I'm not in Nigeria, that's why I can't buy your book, right? So yeah, so that's all for today's class. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. If you have any questions, now is the time to go ahead to ask.
I don't have any question. Thank you.
Thanks, Chidima. Miriam, Christabel, Connie, you guys have any questions?
No questions from my hand as well. Thanks
Yeah.
Oh wow, I must have
Thank
done a
for the
really
you.
good
presentation.
job in teaching. Connie, do you have any questions? Okay, great. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for logging in. I hope this class was as helpful as possible to you. The slides, of course, will be sent to you as usual, and then the recordings as well for you to rewatch it. Even though, apologies, the recording didn't start on time because of technical issues with our with the plugin we're using for the recording. However, I think the most important parts of the classwork were recorded. So apologies for that. And then just to remind you that this is the fifth week of the double tutor program. So there's just one more week to go. We are really excited. We hope you've been able to leverage on the fact that these classes are just weekends, and you're able to leverage on the fact that you are free on weekdays and most part of the weekends to work on your manuscripts, have conversations with your body, to refine your manuscript, and develop your book more. So we look forward to celebrating you guys at the end of the program. We also look forward to providing you with the support you need to become best-selling authors, because at the end of the day, that's really where you get the most value, right? We want you to be the best version of yourselves. We want you to create content and create a book that you yourself will be proud of and the whole world will get to know about, right? So like I always say, please reach out to myself, Sophia or Teniola. Like, we are readily available to you to provide any support that you might need at any stage of developing your manuscript and um, developing your book. So thank you very much, and do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.